Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I'm sharing with you a clip from a recent live event where myself and Jim Morgan are going to discuss a persistent narrative in our community where people will suggest that there's too many cards and that soulbound reward cards have no value and that they will never appreciate. This is constantly spoken, and yet historically it's inaccurate. And I think there's fundamental considerations that I can hold up for you today that in this conversation that are going to hopefully give you a better understanding of not just why it's justifiable to believe that there will be a radical price appreciation for even the most common reward cards, but also why soulbound reward cards are going to be really valuable. And if we believe that these reward cards are going to carry future value, that's why one would spend DEC-B or DEC on extra energy to earn more season and daily chests, as I'm doing and discussing in this video. Thanks, guys. Have an amazing day. God bless. Today I touched 43.19 or something, and I've been using DEC-B, man, to top up, and so today I probably bought, like, look, I got 20 daily chests plus 107 season chests. This is
20 champion. That's a lot,
dude. It is. And I've done this 5 times this season. We're 20 to 25 daily chests, champion chests. I've been in champion since day 3 of the season, and 107 season. I've never seen this number be this high, except for when they're bronzies. So, I mean, DCB into the energy bar for me is an amazing, like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I have to pay 500 DEC per energy. So two energy is like quote unquote $1, or call it 80 cents. Like, that's the market value, the 80 cents roughly. You know, on any given day, I could spend $16 like topping up my energy. But then I also use DEC-B, so that's a 20% change. And then people will tell me like, oh man, it's not worth it. You're not getting anything out of it. You're getting these soulbound cards that nobody cares about, and there's way too many of, and they're never going to have a marketplace. Well, I think that's just so wrong. And we kind of touched on this before we went live. Maybe just before I let you speak on that, let me read a comment I got from Carl B. And this is just so common. He's not the only one that says this sort of thing. He says, I don't think, he's talking about the soulbound. I did a video where I said soulbound reward cards will be more expensive than you think. And he goes, I don't think many cards are going to be expensive going forward. He's talking generally about all cards, but it carries to soulbounds, he thinks. By expensive, I mean like the top cards we had a year ago or so, kitties, etc. We have these enormous print rates, soulbound cards. We have abundance of unopened Chaos Legion. We have Rift Watchers dripping out. We have Rebellion on the horizon. There's so many options for cards now, and it will only increase. People won't pay for cards when something pretty similar is available in a fraction of the cost, except the big champion whales, and there aren't enough of them to drive a consistent market. Especially with the little value of rewards, there is just no payback from throwing a lot of money at cards anymore, and I like that. So I don't agree on a lot of this, but I want to hear. I want to point out, I guess, a couple things that he says, and I want to talk to you about it, Jim, and maybe invite your response. I think, first of all, it's okay if we have a lot of these soulbound cards. Second of all, one of the concerns around soulbounds is that they're going to be released for 2 years. We don't know that. He said 1 to 2 years, and I suspect this will be closer to a year. I was listening to Aftersound before we went live here, and he felt 1 year was going to be the target, not 2. So that's going to be a dramatic change. If it's 2 years, we might have too many copies, but I still don't think so, because we've got things like land. They're going to be used on land. We've got things like some of them are going to be made transferable and put into the marketplace. The fact that not all are going to be made transferable is very meaningful for the price for these. Plus the general idea here that there's too many cards and that they're not going up. We just spent a half an hour talking about Lux and how powerful that's exploded in value. There are going to be cards like that are absolutely going to go up in value. And I don't even believe for a second we've seen the top of some of this reward cards. Half a cent 2 months ago, 1.5 cents now. That's a 3x. So when he says like Kitty, I mean, it's like saying there's not going to be many hockey players like Wayne Gretzky. Okay, yeah, you're right about that, but you're not right that there won't be some amazing opportunities or that there won't be some standouts, right? There's gonna be. And if you navigate the market well, understanding meta understanding gameplay, understanding the utility of a card, what I like to say, the value of the card, not the price, then you can make moves that are going to translate to massive multipliers, I think. Jim, what do you think about this comment? What do you think about Soulbounds, I guess, and anything else in there that got your ear?
So I think he kind of has a point here. In terms of just these specific reward cards, I don't see them being nearly Kitty's price like he's talking about. All right, so I think that's kind of a key point to think about. What is it that he's talking about? You know, we're also saying during a bull market when everything was ridiculously priced and everyone was finding out that Kitty is definitely the best summoner, so then everyone and their brother wanted it. On top of the low number in total circulation, we had how many accounts at that point? We don't even know the exact number. So everyone just wanted to get their hands on one, caused the price to just go nuts. So yes, I don't think these summoners for the rewards, the soulbound ones, are going to get to that price like he's saying. But that doesn't mean these cards can't also go up in value, like you were saying, with the 3 or 5, even 10x. There's no reason it couldn't. When we are also looking at formats in this game, when cards rotate, when new cards become, you know, the meta cards, and people then start wanting those. In every single card game, card stats will slip by of the testers of just trying to figure out what's balanced. So eventually there will be a card that will get to that point of Kitty level, especially if it's a printed set where it's not going to be as much. I don't think Rebellion is going to be printed as much as Chaos Legion. I think they'll probably pay a little bit more attention to that number. And it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna come close to maybe 10 million, if that.
Yeah.
Could even be less than 10 million.
I agree. I think they probably will do like one of those, there's going to be, I think they're going to do something different with the pack release and Rebellion, where they'll either going to say, look, it's 15 million, but at such date, we're going to start burning. And you like this, so there's this window of availability, or they're going to say, we have a window of availability. You buy as many as you want between here and there. And I think it'll be the former though. I think they'll say 15 million packs, but after 9 months, they're going to be, or after 6 months, they're going to start being burned. And by 9 months, they're done. Something like that is what I bet they'll do. And
I also don't think he's taking into consideration the land or other staking mechanisms, also like the tower defense.
Yeah. No, he's not. And that's one of the things. This is a very common comment from people. And I saw one from Kulfi too. So shout out to Kulfi. I appreciate you, dude. Time and attention. He great follow on Twitter. But he did a comment also, which was similar in conversation and note in like on topic. I don't know if I'll find it right now. But he was saying the soulbounds just aren't going to make it. Sorry, I struggle to see this term holding up, that the soulbounds will be super expensive. The print wave will be more than double the Chaos Legion, so it's safe to bet that they'll be less on average. And I guess, from that you have to, I think the question has to be, are they going to be released for 1 year or 2 years? And we don't know that. But I think the fact that they've said that 1 or 2 years, to me, tells me that they are definitely not saying I guess behind closed doors that they will be released for 2 years and we'll just let them believe maybe 1 year. That's not the tone or the approach that this team has ever taken. So I feel as though they're like, Well, let's see how fast they're printed. Let's see how fast people are buying the extra DEC to play more ECR or whatever, and more games played, because that's going to unlock more chests. That's going to unlock more rewards. Whether there's a growth of accounts playing would change the formula. To me, it's like a total willingness to keep the target like moving. And I would argue that we saw with the most recent reward card release just being cut off, that they are attentive to the fact that they could go too far. And I think we end up seeing a year of release of these. But even regardless of that, like set that aside, whether it's 1, 2 years, whatever, I think that's an important conversation, but set it aside. And then, yeah, land, man, like land is going to be there. There's not enough cards in this game, period, to just to support land. Like that's not being properly acknowledged, and by most. It's like, and maybe it's because they don't own land, or maybe Kofi owns land, but maybe some people aren't thinking through what that looks like. But with 5 cards on a plot of land, and you got 150,000 plots, like the amount of cards that are being soaked up, because every card is not going to be 1 BCX. It's going to be as much as you can afford to put on there. That's a ton of cards. It's an insane amount of cards. It's from, I think, the last town hall, Matt or Aggie or someone was saying it's most of the cards. And then somehow you have to navigate committing to that, and yet supporting your own rank play, possibly supporting your alt accounts, fighting in tournaments to achieve success there, maybe continuing to support the rental market, and recognizing that when, let's say, 50% of the cards go into land. I don't know if that's true, but I think it's a huge number. Let's say that it is 50%. I think we're actually going to be desperate for more cards. I actually think there's going to come a time where the rental market prices are soaring, and I think the card prices will follow, because there's a lack of supply available. And then out of that, there'll be this amazing kind of bull market conditions where people get exuberant and they start talking about what they're doing and how much they're gaining. It'll look like this. There'll be massive, significant tweets and like threads on Twitter about how much they're making on the rental market with the cards that they're listing. And then that causes cards to appreciate. So, hey, look how much more my deck has grown in the last 60 days, 90 days. And it'll happen really quickly if this is going to happen at all. And then that just like it did in the past, will be this massive point of excitement and attention through YouTube and everywhere, Twitch and everywhere else. Splinterlands TV is kind of already driving this. You see the viewership there is going through the roof. And I'll tell you personally, my YouTube viewership is ticking up significantly over the last 2-3 weeks. Not to all-time highs, but ticking up significantly. And all of that points to me that if there's what's the word? Like, when you have a fire and the fire burns down, embers, there's these strong embers that are sitting there waiting for fresh fuel. And a little bit of excitement would just suddenly, I think, spike sort of the new entrance. And then, so land is going to soak them up. You still need them for every other game. Plus, if there is a resurgence of new players, and I think there can be through the recipe of what land's going to create, I think this almost necessarily proves that there's just not enough. But we don't see it yet, and it feels so far off. And some cards moving from half a cent to a penny and a half, it doesn't shock, it doesn't surprise, it doesn't impress anyone. But I mean, we just talked about Lux and how that's moved from $400 to $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever. And I think that's not the only one. And I think Rooney 2 is another one, as we've begun to learn more about it. I mean, what are they doing? I think they're selling, like 0.44 is like the floor. I remember they were selling for 0.24. And ETH is higher right now than back then. We're talking $1,600 ETH. And we're talking $400 US. And now at $1,800, you're talking almost half an ETH. And so the price of exceptional cards will go up and has always gone up, and there isn't enough. And I think that's just a fact. But you know what? I don't need to convince anybody. If you guys are doubtful about that, just wait and see. I mean, that's the bottom line.
And that's the bottom line.
Good. I love the reference, by the way.
I actually had a thought when you were talking about that. Could you imagine if they already had land out before Chaos Legion?
If they had land
What?
out before,
Yeah, if
okay.
if land you could put cards on, stake the stuff, be growing things already. Could you imagine what the price of cards would have been like before Chaos Legion came out?
Hmm. Yeah, it would be because of the complete lack of cards on the market, and then this influx
Yeah.
of cards. They would have just been. We were so thirsty for new cards when remember the reward cards ran out. There was none,
Hmm.
and then there was no Untamed, and there was no Chaos Legion yet, and the prices of cards were rocketing. And I think that's another part of the conversation when we talk about how many cards are there, is there enough or not enough? We have to also remember that because of the Soulbounds being released as Soulbound, there's this window of time right now, and probably for the next 10 months, maybe even 2 years, that it's possible. If it's 2 years before we see a release of these Soulbound cards into the marketplace, you have to recognize that that would translate to a massive lack of supply, like a significant change in the supply or inflows into the marketplace for cards. Because what is the most prolific card on the marketplace? It's always the reward cards. And so without there being new reward cards that are daily, weekly, monthly being poured into the market, the number of new cards is being limited. The new cards coming onto this market are coming from where? The only place they're coming from is pack openings. And that's not adequate to meet ongoing demand. That's why prices are ticking up. That's why prices are ticking up. But then also, if we do see any sort of inflow of player base, or we see any sort of external pressures on the amount of existing cards on the market, such as land will create, like we just said, that translates to even more supply demand crunch, because the supply again shrinks again, or the demand grows again. That's the question. Is there enough supply for the existing demand? And then will the supply or the demand change in a predictable fashion in the next 6 months to 12 months? And I think that's a question you can ask yourself. I think I just articulated my opinion. Demand is going to grow, supply is going to shrink, and that's going to translate to price appreciation for every card in the game. But it's happening right now. And soulbounds are part of the creation of that problem, if you want to call it a problem, because in some sense it's a problem for new players, because the prices of cards will get to a place where you'll see people complaining it costs too much to play this game. That we saw that before, we will see it again, and the path to that is through lack of reward cards, and that we are seeing zero come onto the market because they're soulbound, and yeah, eventually they'll be made liquid and we can transfer them through putting DEC into it. But even that's a positive thing for our economy, because the flywheel mechanic. So this, to me, I don't agree with any of the criticism around this, around there's too many of these, or this was a bad move, or soulbounds are a mistake, or there's so many there. But I will say this: there's no perfect solutions, and I'm not saying soulbounds are this perfect execution of game mechanics or economy handling. I'm not. I'm just saying there's a lot of interesting benefits that will come out of this. And sure, there's a complicated nuance to that conversation, but man, I'm excited for these. The other day I got this guy here, I got 3 copies of this guy, and I think he's going to be, I go and I look at gold foil legendaries, and I think, that's an $80 card. If we just look at monsters, gold foil, magic. So even if you said it was like an Oceanus, because Culpy said it's going to be like Chaos Legion. Okay, it's like an Oceanus reward card. 60, 50, 60 bucks. Like, man, for free, I got 180 bucks out of that. I really think that's going to be true. I think that card is ultimately going to be an expensive card. You get the double strike with the magic. Blind is good. Rust is good. At higher levels, it does the 1 more damage. I really want to get that. So I'm excited for these things, big time.